In just a couple of minutes, you're going to know the difference between and I suspect the difference isn't going to be what you thought it was. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. This autumn, 2 new laws went into effect that will probably surprise some people, even people who didn't know they voted for them. It is now legal to hunt with silencers. And the legal age limit has been taken off the opportunity for children to hunt under the close supervision of an adult. The age limit was 10, now there is no lower limit. Both bills passed the Maine legislature with virtually no debate. On today's show, we'll take a look at those 2 bills and give a listen to why something that might have been controversial just didn't turn out that way. Along the way, we'll stop into the newest, most modern indoor shooting range in the state. And during a talk with one member of the legislature's Committee on Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, I'll ask what I've gotten myself into, because I've just been named the House Chair of that committee, starting right now. Oh boy. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, EBS, and Supercuts in Bangor, Brewer, and Old Town. It is now legal to hunt with silencers in Maine. This comes as a surprise to a lot of Mainers, including to a few legislators who passed the law. That's because there was such strong agreement in the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee that the bill came out of the committee with unanimous support once they had worked it over quite a bit. When a unanimous report comes out of committee, typically it goes on the consent calendar of the legislature along with a list of other unanimously supported bills. When it comes up for legislative enactment, unless somebody objects, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President just bang the gavel and the bills are sent to the governor to become law. In the case of LD 942, that is exactly what happened. No debate in the House, no debate in the Senate. On the unanimous recommendation of the committee, the bill simply became law, and even many members of the legislature didn't realize it. And that's not a problem. In fact, that is normal, because that's the kind of strong consensus in committee that is supposed to lead to automatic passage. In a moment, I'll pop into Maine Military Supply and Holden to see how all this works in real life. But first, a few things you should know. Silencers are legal, and they always have been. The federal government issues the permits, and the requirements are stringent. Silencers have been commonly used in Maine, mostly at shooting ranges so as to cause less disturbance to neighbors. Something else to know, it's not like the movies. Silencers are not silent. Just like the muffler on your chainsaw, only some of the noise goes away. There are basically 3 noises made by a firearm: the mechanical action, the explosive gases coming out of the barrel, and the crack of the bullet as it breaks the sound barrier. The suppressor only muffles the noise of the gases. To find out more about it, I went on YouTube, where you can actually find quite a few demonstrations. I selected one that featured a Walther P22. I chose that one because James Bond uses a Walther. Okay, he actually uses the Walther PPK in most of the movies. In the last couple of movies, he switched to a Walther P99, which is made of a polymer, fires a 9mm, and carries 16 rounds. But maybe that's too much information. The point is, even the smaller P22 is not quiet. From the video, here is the sound without a silencer. And here it is with the silencer. Now, you can get a much quieter effect if you use subsonic ammunition, but that's not good for much more than target practice. So that's all the theory, but I barely know what I'm talking about. To get a better handle on it, I'm at Maine Military Supply. They came to my attention when I saw a video about the subject passed along by the Sportsmen's Alliance of Maine. I'm up at the second floor office of Frank's Pizzuco. Maine Military Supply. You're over the line in Holden?
Holden, yes.
Okay, so you go out from Brewer, you're right there on the right-hand side of the road as you're heading towards Ellsworth. You can tell you're there when you see a jet in the parking lot. What is that, a MiG out there?
It's a Russian 21 MiG.
Is that right? The reason I stopped in here is because the legislature just passed a new law, LD 942, which made it legal to hunt with a silencer, and now I got residents and neighbors saying, "What did you do?" So I said, well, I got to talk to some of these guys about what is it that the legislature just did. I guess my first question is, do you call it a silencer or a suppressor?
I think the industry norm is both.
Yeah.
Silencers, suppressors. Mm-hmm. I think it's understood as either.
Okay, good. I didn't know if there was some negative connotation to silencer because of all those spy and gangster movies. And so suppressors were actually legal. Federal government had regulations on them, but they're legal to possess, and they always have been.
Yes, they are legal to possess.
Yeah, and so they were never banned. And so if the legislature goes ahead and says, yes, you can use them, well, the fact is they already could, just not for specific uses like certain hunting.
Correct. Same process as to possess them as it was before.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think really took a lot of people by surprise is when this went through the committee process in the legislature, it came out of the Committee of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife unanimous, passing the new law without any dissent in the committee. When that happens, it goes to the floor of the legislature and passes automatically. We don't even debate it, and sometimes we don't even know it. We call it going under the hammer, and it just sort of passes without any discussion whatsoever. So I think it took some people by surprise to realize we can now hunt with silencers. What's the deal on what you can hunt? Do you remember?
What you can...
Yeah, what you can hunt with a silencer. Just any game animal?
I'm not sure exactly, but I'm assuming it would be deer and coyote night hunting.
Yeah. Yeah, anything you could hunt previously, I think, without a silencer, you can now hunt with a silencer, providing that you jump through all the hoops it takes to hunt with one. You've got to have a permit.
Correct.
Okay. So they were already legal. In fact, if I understand correctly, and I'm getting some of this from your own video, Maine Military Supply has been working to get the information out to the public about a lot of issues. One of these that I saw from your website was on the issue of silencers, and it was already allowed in, I think, 38 other states. There's only a handful of states that didn't allow this. So as it turns out, just about every other state, maybe 10, 11 other states, didn't allow it. We were actually in the minority of states when it came to how we treated this particular accessory to firearms. What kind of permits are needed to buy one?
The process now, basically, it's not a permit. Well, you need a permit to get the license.
Yeah, okay.
You get the license from Inland Fisheries, but the process to buy it, how we explain it, it's like a title to a vehicle. You basically come in the store, you pay for the silencer. You then have a form. You have to fill it out. We help you fill it out. You have to get a copy of your fingerprints, and the local law enforcement officer has to sign off on the form claiming that you're not prohibited, from the best of his knowledge, to owning one. And you come back with that information and a couple passport photos, and we mail that all in with a $200 check to ATF, and we wait their approval. Sometimes it's, a couple months. It's been as long as 6 to 8 months to get it back.
So the fact is it's expensive and you have to jump through a lot of hoops just to possess one, never mind hunt with it.
It's not easy,
It's not, no.
It takes time.
Yeah, in fact, it has always been legal to own one, but it's something not a lot of people did just because it was expensive and it did take time and it was kind of a hassle.
It is. It's kind of a pain for...
Yeah. It's legal, but it's highly regulated by the ATF. To hunt with one, you have to have a permit from the state in order to use a silencer.
Correct.
Okay. So they would have to, first of all, check and make sure you're legally able to possess one. You'd have to produce that paperwork to get your permit.
Correct.
Okay. And so if a game warden sees you in the woods with a silencer, he will check your paperwork to make sure you are legally able to possess one.
Yes.
And if you pass all that muster, then you can go ahead and hunt with it. All right.
Correct.
I must have done my homework right because you're saying correctly everything I say. I got to figure out.
You watched the video.
Yeah, well, I did. Yeah, and I'm in the legislature. I'm supposed to know this stuff since we passed the damn bill. I'm in the office of Frank Spizzuko at Maine Military Supply in Holden. We're talking about the new law that just went into effect to allow hunting with silencers or suppressors, depending on your preference. The big question is, why would anyone hunt with one? Many people automatically assume that it's to poach a deer without attracting attention. Many people would be wrong. We'll get into it when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine returns on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. My guest is Frank Spizzuko at Maine Military Supply on Route 1A in Holden. We're talking about the new law that allows hunting with silencers. Now, it's always been legal in Maine to own suppressors. They've been seen a lot on firing ranges, especially ranges with nearby neighbors. and now it is legal to hunt with them. So I'll put the question to you, Frank. Why would people want to hunt with a silencer?
Well, I think probably the most important reasons, well, your hearing, for one.
Yeah.
But I think, too, night hunting, coyote hunting. It's big. It's pretty popular. We sell a lot of stuff strictly just for night hunting, coyote. And it's done at night, and it's done late at night, and it's done in the middle of the winter, and people hear gunshots.
Freaks them out.
When they shouldn't normally hear them. So people, you're getting calls out there when they're not necessary.
Yeah.
That's one reason.
I would think game wardens must be driven nuts by calls from people saying, I heard somebody poaching a deer, when in fact somebody was out coyote hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now, the public discussion on this, I think, gets weird because it's shaped by all those gangster and spy movies that suggest the only use of one of these things is a silent assassination.
Yeah, none of that's true.
No. Do you run into that? Do you ever have a talk like that with anybody?
Yeah, most of the people that come in to buy them, they've done their homework. A lot of times they know more about what they want than we do because they've been reading on it and obsessing about it. But, as far as the noise reduction, it's not like in the movies. It's not quiet like that. It's quiets it up so that you don't have to wear ear protection, but it's still loud. You still get that crackdown range of when the bullet breaks the sound barrier. So it's
not silent.
No.
No. Yeah, I know when the committee was working the bill, they actually had some kind of a demonstration down there to show the committee that it's not silent.
Correct.
It doesn't make a noise. How far away? I haven't heard it. How far away can you hear the noise?
That I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it would depend on where you're shooting and, if you're in the woods or in a field and the terrain and whatnot.
Well, the real usefulness is the same reason we have mufflers on lawnmowers, so you can hear your grandkids talk when you're 70. It's protecting your hearing. I've got so many friends who are hunters who most of our conversations there it goes like, "Hey, what'd you say?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh? So, is that why most people previously have had silencers?
I think so. And then, just a lot of the people that own them, they're hardcore collectors,
Yeah.
They want one of everything.
Yeah.
We see them.
Oh, my uncle's like that. There are some places that are getting just too crowded for shooting ranges these days, and the neighbors complain. I'm thinking Cape Elizabeth, where there's been controversy about an old club there that, that now the neighbors don't like, even though it was there before they were. How often are these used at outdoor shooting ranges so it's just not bothering the neighbors? Do you know?
We were using them up until we built this indoor range. We were using 22s with silencers, and we were teaching our classes and shooting into a bullet bunker. So, just up a year ago we were. So I think it's fairly common. It's getting harder to shoot outdoors.
Yeah.
More people are closing their pits. They're gating off property. So it is getting more difficult.
Well, the fact is we're 1.3 million people right now, and it's getting crowded in the suburbs. And so we're getting these conflicts between private homeowners and our traditional uses of the woods. And this is just another example.
Yeah.
And people get upset when we turn to a solution that's a silencer, and they don't like that either. So what the new law did was allow what was already allowed just about everywhere else, but it put strict legal requirements on it and strict permit requirements, which we covered. But it also put some really strict penalties on misuse. Have you looked at that law?
I haven't.
Oh, man. It's like $1,000 mandatory penalty. The judge can't even waive part of that if you got no money. You lose the firearm. You lose your right to hunt for at least 5 years. Seems to me anybody caught jacking a deer with a silencer is really going to pay through the nose.
Yeah, and I think you're getting into federal laws with the NFA.
Yeah. How much do suppressors cost?
They range. You can buy them from anywhere from $300 to $1,500, and then it's $200 for the stamp for the approval. It
seems like much of the time the suppressor costs more than the firearm.
It can. It's close.
Yeah. Which firearms can you use them on? You can't use them on a shotgun.
They do make a shotgun suppressor. Yeah,
really?
It's mostly your bolt actions, 22s. The barrels have to be threaded.
Do you have to do the threading yourself, or do you buy the firearm pre-threaded, or how does that work?
A lot of them come threaded.
So they can cost $300 to $1,500. Is there a real quality difference in the makes of these?
They all have, different claims to fame.
Yeah.
Some work better than others. Some you can take them apart and clean them. Some you can't. We mix it up and go with 3 or 4 different companies. We try to pick the ones that have the best reputation and the best marketing.
Yeah. Do you test them on your own range out here to see how they are?
We've used a lot of them, and the ones, when people buy them here while they're waiting, they come by and they get their what we call conjugal visits, and they can shoot them while they're here. Because sometimes it takes months to get them. Yeah. To get the paperwork back.
Well, again, I don't know if everybody listening caught that, but not only is it the cost of the suppressor itself, but you got to give the federal government $200.
One-time fee, yeah.
One-time fee in order to get your. Is that to possess one or to possess that particular silencer?
It's that particular one and that serial number. So each time you buy one, it's another $200.
Jeez. So if you've got multiple firearms that you want to use in your own backyard shooting range, it can get expensive.
Well, the suppressor you only do once. You can put it on multiple firearms.
What if it's a different caliber? You would need a different size.
Correct. Yeah, different suppressor, different caliber.
Right, okay. Do they actually affect the accuracy of the range at all?
Some say they're more accurate. I don't think there's much of a difference. But again, that's a good manufacturer's question.
Boy, if you're going to poach a deer, there's got to be a cheaper way to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what might have swayed the committee is people are not going to misuse these things very often, and if you get caught, it really is going to cost you.
Yeah, and the people that are buying them aren't the people, they don't commit crimes with them.
Yeah.
They're not used in crimes, and they're not the ones that are going to pay the $200 and wait to get them back.
Yeah. No, right. A lot of homeowners want to hear the shot so they know if someone's hunting too close. What do you say to those folks? What do you say? When a homeowner does want to know, doesn't mind hunting, we grew up with that tradition in the state, so a lot of people are comfortable with it, but they do want to know if somebody's in their suburban woods hunting a little too close and they want to hear the shot.
They are probably the ones that have posted their property.
Yeah.
That don't want people around.
Yeah. How much do they weigh? Do they affect the balance of the firearm at all?
No.
Because it's right out there in the
muzzle. They're light. No, they don't affect that.
Yeah. Is this a gun rights argument? And by that I mean, the Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms, but does that extend to silencers?
I think so.
Do you? Yeah.
I think so. They've always been legal to possess. Why not hunt with them? I think one thing is when we did the video on how to, they were becoming legal, what we should have done is the process to purchase one, because people were coming in thinking that they could just buy a silencer to hunt with. Yeah. And they need to know that that's not true, that the same process to possess one still exists.
Whose job do you think is it going to be to get that out to the public? Because you're already taking on that job with your videos, but should the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Department do it? Or?
Well, it should be the people selling it. And, we're putting it out there, creating a whole YouTube channel with just videos and education. Yeah. So hopefully that gets around, and the business owners should be the ones that educate the people.
Well, I think the people do need to know that, it's legal to possess. It's even legal to hunt with them. But, boy, you're going to have to drop some cash and jump through some hoops.
Yeah.
I'm at Maine Military Supply in Holden, discussing the new law in Maine that now allows hunting with silencers. Frank Spizzuco and I have been going over the actual details. This outfit has really been growing in the last few years, and they've just added an indoor shooting range, the most modern in the state. We're going to head down there. It'll take us a minute to get through the store, so meet me down there in about 3 minutes. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Thanks to the passage of LD 942, it is now legal to hunt with a silencer or noise suppressor in Maine. But just like you always had to, you have to get a permit from the feds. Just the application costs you $200. The suppressor itself costs anywhere from $300 to $1,500, and that's on top of the cost of the firearm. Meanwhile, you've got to wait anywhere from 2 to 6 months for the federal approval. Until that piece of paper comes in, your silencer is going to sit right here on this shelf in a storeroom just outside the indoor shooting range at Maine Military Supply, where I'm getting the tour from Frank Spizzuco right now. Until the paperwork comes through, you can actually visit and use your silencer at this shooting range. The store jokingly calls them conjugal visits. We're heading into the shooting range. All right, Frank, we're now in the shooting range, so tell me what I'm looking at.
Basically, we built a 8-lane indoor range. In the back, it's a steel trap system, so it handles any caliber. We're at maximum 75 feet.
Mm-hmm. Any caliber up to what? Or just
50 BMG.
Is that right? Jeez. So people come in here with their own firearms. They have to use some of yours. They can borrow some of yours. How's it work?
Yeah, you can bring your own.
Yeah.
We have a whole rental fleet, handguns. We have machine guns. We have a try before you buy program.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different options.
How many people come in here and try a machine gun?
This summer, I was quite surprised. It carried us through with the Taurus.
No kidding, really?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
It's state of the art.
Yep.
The air handling system is a second part of it, other than the trap system.
Well, if you use a lot of firearms in an enclosed space, don't you cause a lot of residue in the air?
Right, and the smoke, and this gets rid of it. Mm-hmm. It's the most costly part of the range, but it's probably the most important, and it basically separates us from any other range in the state. I think the only exception is Wyndham is opening one this weekend. Mm-hmm. They came up and used us as consultants. I consulted for them for about 8 months on what works, what doesn't work, and they are doing the same thing with their range.
Now, anybody who's really into firearms is also really into safety, and the moment you walk in the door, it says you got to wear eye protection and ear protection to get in here.
It is eyes and ears, and we always have a NRA certified range safety officer in the range at all times.
Great. So there you have it, the backstory on the new law that allows hunting with silencers in Maine. My thanks to Maine Military Supply and Frank Spizzuko for the visit. Next, we'll take a look at another new law that could have been controversial but wasn't. LD 156 passed without much ruckus in the State House. It repealed Maine's minimum age requirement for hunting with a qualified adult. The age was 10, now legally it's nothing. Practically, of course, it's the judgment of the qualified adult as to when the youngster is ready to join the chase under very, very strict supervision. Patrick Corey is a member of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. He's a state representative from Wyndham. We'll take a look together at why this bill became law rather easily. Patrick, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Well, thanks for being on. LD 156 repealed Maine's minimum hunting age. It was 10. Now it's up to the judgment of the parent, just like it is in 39 other states. I was a little surprised to find out that most states actually didn't have a limit either.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that legislation, I think initially they were talking about putting it age 8, but
right.
I believe from reading the department's testimony, and I'm not sure if you took a look at that or not, they actually talked about removing the age limit altogether.
What was the rationale? Did the department have certain rationale they presented and lobbyists different, or were everybody pretty much united on the same page on that?
I don't remember. I think that we listened to the department's testimony, and then I do believe that possibly the department or the lobbyists, after talking to the department, had decided that it didn't make sense to put an age on it. Yeah, I think a big part of it is that it's really kind of up to the parents to figure it out. I mean, you've got 8-year-olds out there that are more mature than 12-year-olds. So.
And there's 8 years old out there who are more mature than members of the legislature, so I would agree with you.
Yep.
It is up to the judgment of the parents, but we've had one of the things about Maine being not first on this is that we can look at the experiences in 39 other states and recognize that the statistics there indicate that this is a fairly safe practice. Yeah,
I mean, from what I was reading earlier, and from what I remember hearing at the committee meeting, was that junior hunting is 5 times safer. The junior hunters, the people that are out there hunting with their parents, are 5 times safer than the general hunting population. So adults out in the woods hunting with other adults.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it stands to reason, because if you're going to give a firearm to an 8-year-old, you're going to watch that kid like a hawk.
I would.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think most people would. I think the level of attention and care probably increases exponentially, so the chances of an accident actually drop exponentially just because everybody is being so careful.
Well, I mean, I think the parents, their child is probably their most valuable resource. Do you know what I mean? Or their most valuable thing. So they're not necessarily going to allow their kids to go out and do something unsafe.
Right. Well, junior hunting rates were also lower in states that had restrictions. So states like ours, which did restrict it, actually saw kids getting into the traditional sports a little bit less than the ones who actually had no restrictions. Did that sway the committee much?
The idea that fewer kids were hunting in states like ours than in states where there was hunting.
Sure.
I mean, that was a huge sway. I think that, we have to be cognizant of the idea that, if we want hunting in the future in the state of Maine, that, we need large amounts of people doing it. I think what was happening is, and I remember some of the testimony went in this direction, was that you had kids that would start playing soccer, very, very young, and then their parents would sign them up for travel teams and all of that other stuff. And, between all of the activities and stuff like that, hunting would kind of end up sort of last on the list. It wasn't, a priority when you have these other weekly activities kind of taking over for it.
Yeah, there are some cultural shifts going on there that I think we were a little bit slow to recognize. You've got kids who are learning how to play Angry Birds at 3, and then playing soccer at 4 and 5. By the time they get to 10 years old and are able to hunt, they've got so many other hobbies going on in their lives that the traditional ones that we've all grew up doing have sort of been left behind.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I think that one of the most impressive things that happened when we were going through the testimony is we had a girl, and she must have been about 8 years old, get up in front of us, and she actually testified. Mm-hmm. And she pulled up a chair, and she had stepped up on it so that she could get up to the podium, and she had a piece of paper she unfolded, and she had written in very big letters her testimony, and she, sort of set forth with it, and she had told us that she's a good aimer, and that she keeps her that was her word, good aimer, and that she keeps her finger off the trigger of the firearm, and that she's ready to go hunting with her father. And for me, any child, that they could kind of get up in front of a committee of 13 men in suits and petition us for a right that she felt that she should have. I had to be impressed with that. I don't know a lot of adults that could do that.
No, isn't that kind of funny that way? But yeah, you're right. I've seen that very seldom, but it's exciting when it does happen. It's really never too early for kids to learn. I have the Maine Youth Fish and Game Association in my backyard here, and they get kids out to the range pretty darn early just to teach them not only about the thrills of firearms, but also the responsibilities that go with it. That's a good thing to learn pretty early.
Yeah, definitely. We brought out a kid hunting for the first time last week. He wasn't carrying a firearm. He wasn't hunting, but I have a buddy that comes up from Massachusetts, and me and him, me and his father go out hunting together. I got that all messed up. But we go out and hunt an Otis field for deer, and we brought Noah along with us, and we dressed him up like a pumpkin, very visible,
Yeah.
He hung out with his father all day long, and he just fell asleep twice, laid on the ground and took a nap right on the leaves. One time, he even rested his head on sort of a rotting log, and his father was describing how the kid's head, sort of depressed in the log. So, it was a good day for him. He enjoyed it, and he was happy to be out there even without a firearm, I think.
Patrick Corey is my guest. He's a state representative and a member of the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee that approved the new law that removes age restrictions on when children may hunt under the supervision of a qualified adult. Now, to be really clear, there are some restrictions, and we'll get into them in a moment when Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine continues on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket, with Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Today, we're investigating a couple of new laws that might raise some eyebrows. It is now legal to hunt with silencers in Maine, and there are now no restrictions on how old a child must be before hunting under adult supervision. I'm discussing that one with Representative Patrick Corey, a member of the committee. The minimum age was 10. Now any child can do it. But there are restrictions. The most important is that the qualified adult has to be right there by the child's side. Right there at all times.
Yeah, and I don't believe, and I'd have to go back and I'd have to look at the original law, I don't believe that that parents had to be within 20 feet, of the junior hunter before. I believe that we ended up putting that restriction in place with an amendment.
Yep. Yeah, I think you did. I mean,
So-
the committee has a talent for working over the bills to make sure that they really achieve the objective, and I think you did a pretty good job on this one.
Yeah, and a big piece with it was that they said, at least with the kid, that the junior hunter, that the parent needs to be under quote effective control of that child, and what that means is that they couldn't be watching the kids with a binocular or a set of binoculars, or communicating with the kids with a walkie-talkie. So I think that having that kid within that distance definitely puts them under control.
One thing that does not change is the junior hunting program, which is for ages 10 to 16. You didn't touch that. That all stays the same?
Yes, I believe that what can happen is a kid can go out and take hunter safety at age 10,
Mm-hmm.
and then I know that at age 16, nobody can hunt on their own until they're 16.
The original bill, as you said, would have lowered the age to 8, and then no restriction was put on whatsoever, and that was with the support of the department. I guess the experience when you look at other states was the same. The 8-year-old date was kind of arbitrary. You're very seldom going to put a firearm to the hands of a 5-year-old anyway. So, really,
Right.
there's a practical limit within a household. Why write it into law when there's already a practical way to do it?
I think it's also one of those things like how would you practically enforce it as well? I think if you had a game warden out there and you had the parent with the kid, you'd have to be probably carrying the kid's birth certificate or something like that to prove how old they are. So I'm not sure if maybe that lent a little bit into it.
Yeah, it's not like you can ask the kid for a driver's license.
Right.
And certainly he doesn't have a hunter's license, so that kind of rules it out. Yeah, I see what you mean. Now, I assume that there were arguments made about kids being just too young at a certain age to ever be allowed out. What was the gist of the arguments made by the people who didn't like the idea?
I think that there was only one woman that had come in. I think that she was from Cape Elizabeth, and I don't really remember. I was going to go back and review all the testimony today, but that was the only against testimony I saw. I don't know if the department testified for, or if they testified not for or against.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that was the only. There wasn't a lot of testimony. There's only it looked like there's about 5 people that had gotten up and spoke about it, and I think 2 of them were lobbyists.
Well, it seems like the kind of thing that could be controversial until you dig into it and then realize, I guess that kind of makes sense. That's what other states are doing, and the experience has been okay.
I mean, I can say that I was personally uncomfortable with it at first. I mean, and I think that's good. I think that as a legislator, it's good to be out there and questioning and not sort of dumping on things right away. But once I heard some of the facts and learned about what the rates were outside of adult hunting, what the children's accidents rates were, it didn't seem like as big of a deal as I had thought it was in my mind.
Was there much concern about some parents don't exercise good judgment? Criticism of parents, possibly?
I do believe that when we were looking at it, that the parents had to have been hunting for at least the last 3 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there was a lot of discussion surrounding that. I mean, parents are definitely going to have to exercise good judgment. I don't think that you can put a big deer rifle in a kid's hands on the field. I mean, they would never be able to handle it. But I kind of think that any parent that would have their kid interested at that age would certainly try to do the most responsible thing. Probably start them out on small game even.
Yeah, exactly. And I can think of several parents I would not want to put a firearm in their hands either.
Yeah.
So this was, the final bipartisan report came out of committee strongly recommending passage. It wasn't even debated in the House. And I'm going to guess again that the big motivation really was to get people involved in Maine's traditional sports as early as is practical, according to the judgment of the family. Is that pretty much it?
That's what I believe.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I mean, we're losing these traditions in Maine, and we have to proactively be looking at ways to increase participation in these sports. So.
Yeah. I think there were some members of the committee, and I think you may have been one of them, who wanted to see at least a bit of an educational component in here. Did you have something in mind?
I talked to the department a little bit, and I'd also talked to the bill sponsor. a little bit. And you know, at first I was thinking, you know, something in line of an online course, and that may have been too much. But, you know, even in the end, maybe a brochure would be good for for parents that are taking their kids out. You know, what your first time in the woods should look like.
That's right.
something like that.
Yeah,
so,
it's really funny.
I don't know. I mean, I still think that can come, and I think that can come with department rulemaking and everything else. I don't know that it's something that we would have had to write into law.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, anybody who's spent any time in the legislature knows that it's an ongoing process, so you can always look and see if there's a difficulty and add education layers later if it looks like we need it. So, you know, no law is ever set in stone for the rest of eternity. We can always fix things.
Yeah, exactly.
This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. My guest is Representative Patrick Corey, and we're discussing LD 156, the new law that removes the age limit on youth hunting. It was 10. Now it is solely up to the judgment of the qualified supervising adult. The bill was approved in a 10-2 vote in the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee, a committee that I have just been asked to chair for the remainder of the 127th legislature. We'll get into that at the end of today's show, too. This is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Patrick Corey is a state representative from Windham and a member of the legislature's Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. We're discussing a new law that removes the age limit on youth hunting with a qualified adult. It doesn't require any hunting education of the child under 10 either.
The reason that kids don't take hunter safety until age 10 is because the curriculum, you know, doesn't necessarily work at those younger ages. So this would have had to been, a very sort of age-specific curriculum.
Yeah, really, there's a certain age period, probably between 5 and 10 years old, where all the kid has to know is, because I said so. After that, maybe they can start to learn on their own. But at some point, it's the parent who's simply exercising the judgment and enforcing it on the kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this law goes along with sort of a lot of other ones, like our apprentice hunter law that, you know, it allows, you know, people to, bring an adult out in the woods hunting with them, which, you know, was a way to, you know, sort of increase participation and everything else. And we've certainly seen that with, you know, some of the news reports. I believe, I'm not sure if you remember it, but I think that there was an article in Down East Magazine where, you know, it was writer there. They had gone out with, you know, a couple of, you know, guides for their first hunt, and it was with an apprentice hunter license. And what that does is it allows you to go out without having to commit to the full-on, you know, hunter safety class.
Yeah, I recall. I guess you can do that twice, and then it was. I know they were talking about raising it to 5 times before you had to get a license, but I don't remember where it settled out.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a try before you buy,
right? Yeah,
kind of thing. You know, the idea of you know going out and throwing, you know, $700 down on a gun and, you know, another $500 down on camo and all that other stuff before you decide whether or not you're interested in it or not is probably a good thing.
Yeah. Well, as you know, I'm taking over as House Chair of the committee, which probably surprises a lot of people, including me.
Oh, you got on the best committee in the state House.
Well, you know, I mean, I didn't tell a whole lot of people this, but as you know, I used to just go and sit and watch the committee for fun, just because it really is a fun committee, and you got a good bunch of guys, and you really do dig into the issues responsibly, and it looked like a good committee to serve on. I didn't expect to end up chair.
I always think about how great I have it, you know, in the state House. You know, it's an extremely sort of nonpartisan committee. You know, none of the ideas are, you know, decided there along partisan ideological boundaries that you know, all of us can, you know, sit down and look for doing what's best for the residents of the state of Maine. And, you know, I think it's a good time, and, you know, we have fun and we joke around, and, you know, we see the same people over and over again that, you know, that come in and testify in front of us, and it's a great deal. It's a good place to be.
Yeah, of all the more friendly, personable, interesting committees, I would say I&W is definitely close to the top of the list, and you got lucky to get that gig. And now I get to chair it, which is, what have I gotten myself into?
With regard to chairing I&W.
Yeah.
I don't know what laws are coming up. I don't know if there's anything very controversial. Did you take a look at it? What's coming up for emergency legislation? Did any of it sneak through? Or
yeah, just one snuck through. I think Representative Black from Wilton had a bill that allows the state to sell or donate or something snowmobile grooming equipment to private entities, private clubs and stuff. I think that bill got approved, and that's the only one that affects I-W. So there are 3 carryover bills, and that one, and that's all I know about.
Yeah, you had a carryover bill,
Yeah, I know.
right? Was it your marketing bill that's a carryover bill?
Yeah, isn't that irony? Not only did I, my bill, one of the few bills that actually got carried over, get carried over to this year, but now I'm chair. That I may be responsible for killing my own bill by the time we're done with this thing.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I know that bill was, designed to, get out there and make it so that the department could market itself better. Right now, they've sort of been under a sort of marketing process themselves, where they're getting a lot of information now and putting together data. And hopefully, from what I understand, by the end of January, they'll have something for us to take a look at and see what that is. And then, who knows? We may end up using your bill in some way to augment, that kind of effort that they're putting together on their own. So
yeah, well, we probably share the same philosophy that if something can be done without a bill, kill the bill and let's get her done. What really struck me as I went into this process was looking at the department and saying, this is the only department in state government that is expected to act like a business, by which I mean it has to raise its own revenue in order to pay for its own operations. And if you don't market, then you see a spiraling decline in revenue, and you do less and less, and you can't dig yourself out of that hole. So, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, the interesting thing about inland fisheries and wildlife is that it actually has to raise even more money than it uses for consumptive type activities. And when I'm talking about consumptive activities, I'm talking about hunting and fishing.
Right. Yes.
So the department also has to raise money to take care of every other species of wildlife out there and everything else. I know that back in the 90s, I believe there's a constitutional amendment that basically said that the state would have to pay IF&W sort of 18% of its annual budget, because at that time I think they had figured out sort of what the non-consumptive uses that IF&W was managing are. So, but I think that IF&W has to raise a lot of that money on its own through fishing and hunting license fees, along with ATVs and snowmobiles and all of that other stuff.
Yeah,
so,
that was the issue, as I recall, because it wasn't a constitutional amendment. It was just a law that was passed some years ago, maybe 10 years ago. And that law said that 18% of the budget would have to come out of the general fund, and, of course, we've never, ever done it. And
we've never been able to meet that.
Yeah, and every legislature can ignore previous laws because that's what the legislature is empowered to do. You make new laws every time. So, unfortunately, that's a law that's been just completely ignored.
Yeah, so I mean, they not only have to be a business, they have to be a successful business,
right.
Which is,
Well, now I'm going to have to put my fingerprints in all of that, and at least you'll be sitting on the same table with me, so I look forward to working with you, Patrick.
You as well, Bob.
That's Representative Patrick Corey, a member of the legislature's Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. So far in the show, we've been talking about 2 new laws that have just taken effect. It is now legal to hunt with silencers, and there are no longer any age restrictions on youth hunting so long as they are strictly supervised by a qualified adult. Both of those bills could have been controversial, but weren't. The silencer law sailed right through with no debate. The youth hunting bill was amended slightly in the Senate to clarify that adults supervising the child must be within 20 feet of the child at all times, and then that sailed right through. Of course, there was one bill that was highly controversial. LD 652 authorized a person not prohibited from possessing a firearm by federal or state law to carry a concealed handgun without first obtaining a permit. In addition, it allowed for the possession of a loaded handgun in a motor vehicle, which wasn't allowed before. It's always been lawful to carry a handgun out in the open in the state, and the state had granted almost 50,000 concealed weapon permits under the old system. The bill was so controversial that even law enforcement split on it. Maine State Police supported it, the Maine Chiefs of Police and Maine Sheriff's Association opposed. There were multiple amendments and split votes in the House and Senate that did not necessarily split along party lines. The subject is too big to tackle on this show for now, especially since we're out of time today, but it is a good example of how the legislature does its work. Maine is a bit unusual. Every state except Nebraska has 2 branches of the legislature. Many states have committees in each branch that hears and amends bills. Maine has joint committees with 10 representatives and 3 senators on each committee, and co-chairs from each body. It does help reduce redundancy, and it helps keep the two legislative bodies more on the same page with each other, more efficient. The legislature splits the workload by sending bills off to those committees of expertise to do the hearing process and work sessions. How those bills are divided up is always a bit fascinating. For instance, the gun bills on today's show involved hunting, and such bills go off to the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Committee. Bills on constitutional rights generally go off to the Judiciary Committee. But bills about who gets to carry firearms and under what circumstances are not actually Second Amendment constitutional issues most of the time. They're technical issues about permits and rules, and those go off to the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. Enough of the civics lesson. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, EBS, and Supercuts in Bangor, Brewer, and Old Town. This show airs every Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8. This episode and all previous shows are archived on the web at 929theticket.com. Although for 1 hour each weekend morning it doesn't sound like it, this is Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.